Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free review of Moana 2. The question I want to answer by the end of this review is, was it even necessary? And yes, I know I'm an adult man talking about a movie primarily meant for kids, but it's a Disney movie. It is important, so we're here to talk about it. Pretty much what this movie is about, I hate to say it, it's basically the same thing as the first one when it comes to the plot line. Moana goes out on another big adventure. This one is going to test her levels of being a leader now, somebody now who can speak and communicate with the ocean to a whole new level. So, really, I would say if you didn't watch the first one, it's almost like watching it again. And that kind of sucks. And I know to the younger audience, that's probably not really going to matter. The fact that this movie pretty much follows the exact same beats as Moana 1, I don't think a kid is going to care about that. But for me as an adult, I just wanted something a little bit more. So to answer my question early on, I don't really think this sequel was necessary. And when it comes to Disney's plan of action with their movies, on whether they put them in theaters or whether they put them on streaming, I feel like this one was kind of rushed together and slapped on and put out in the theaters, because this one kind of came out out of nowhere saying that, hey, we're going to put out a new Moana movie this year. We're also working on the live action remake of the first one. It kind of feels like they're just having a cash grab on Moana as a whole. And I feel like the first one was really important for portraying a character in a full length movie that we haven't really seen before in Disney. I don't want to stray away from that and the importance of that, because I think that representation is significant when it comes to the story of Moana, the people it represents, the music, the way they speak. I love all of that. But when it comes to what I look for in sequels, especially in animated sequels that we've been talking about this entire episode, is it building upon the first one and taking your character to another level, or does it just feel like, hey, remember what worked in that first one? Let's do that entire thing again and see if we can make some money off this thing. And that is what this movie felt like to me. To me, I felt Disney had this decision to make. Do we want to put this movie out in theaters? Do we want to put it on Disney Plus? But given the fact that it is a big property, you have The Rock, one of the biggest actors in the world right now, probably of the last 5 years, maybe even the last 10 years. You're going to put out in theaters and you're probably going to make a lot of money. And looking at the box office numbers from opening weekend, it is generating a lot of revenue. I do think it is going to have a pretty big dip. Maybe not too significant, because it is a family-friendly movie. It is a Disney movie out during the holidays right now, where every single movie we've gone to see in the last week has been packed. So I think the demand is still going to be there. And I think when it comes to word of mouth for an animated movie, it doesn't really carry that same weight, because I think families are just going to go see this regardless. But for me, as the adult Disney fan, I don't call myself a Disney adult. I don't think I'm on that level. If that is your thing, hey, whatever makes you happy. But I'm not super obsessed with the first one. Whenever I saw Moana 1 in theaters back in 2016, I didn't like it upon first watch. I didn't really get the flow of the movie and the story. It wasn't really until I rewatched that movie and it hit a second time, and I became a little bit more of a Lin-Manuel Miranda fan, that I realized how good that first one actually is. And my other main problem I had with this movie, not just that the story was very repetitive from the first one, there's no real struggle. It kind of feels like the villain was a rehashed version of the villain from the first movie. It was the music. The music was so important to Moana 1, really so important in any Disney movie right now. You need that one big song. In Moana, you had that song, How Far I'll Go, which is the big anthem from that movie. It is the character-defining song of Moana. That is your hit from that. Every Disney musical movie needs that song to really resonate with kids, to really drive this to be a movie that a kid is going to leave the theater and immediately want to go watch it on Disney Plus, even though it isn't available yet. You need that song to define your movie. Moana 2 did not have that song. It didn't have a How Far I'll Go. It didn't have a You're Welcome, which is another character-defining song from Maui. It didn't even have the Shiny Thing song from one of the villains in the first movie. There were no memorable songs whatsoever in Moana 2. And what I believe it comes down to is that Lin-Manuel Miranda was not a part of this movie. He did not write the songs. You have two new female writers who did all the music, and they were really just given guidance from Lin-Manuel Miranda. before they started making the music for this movie, he sat down with them and gave them the blueprint of what he did on the first one and what worked in that movie. And then they said he was just a phone call or FaceTime away. So maybe they used him with some guidance here and there. But you really felt his presence missing in these songs because they lack originality. And it felt like they were given the assignment of, hey, do what we did in the first movie, channel your best Lin Manuel Miranda, and create your own songs, but you have to fit in this box. And what happens when you do that, when it comes to music, is you lose that creativity because you're just trying to do an impression. You're trying to cover the songs from the first one and make them your own, but you don't have that same artist doing it. And you don't have that originality because if Lin Manuel Miranda was given this movie and said, hey, let's see what you can do here with all these new characters, with this new storyline, what songs can you create? He's not going to do exactly what he did in the first one. He's going to experiment and do different things. And that is where you get the better songs. Not trying to do an impression of what you did in the first one, but trying to build upon it and create new songs. And you see this happening in movies all the time. Whenever the Batman movies lost Danny Elfman and they had to bring in a new composer and say, hey, do what Danny Elfman did and create these themes, you can't do it because you're trying to do an impression of somebody. You're not being original and you're really not growing the music in any way. So I really felt out of everything that was really what was lacking in this movie, that that is the one factor I could see bleeding out to the younger audience of it not being as memorable and it not being their favorite because these songs aren't really going to stick in your head. I wasn't leaving the theater thinking, oh, I still had that song stuck in my head. Darn that Moana 2. I really could not name you the melodies from any of those songs because it felt like all of the lyrics to the songs were really saying the same thing over and over again, where the message was there of like, you can really do things if you put your mind to it. You can go and be really strong. But it just felt like every song was saying that over and over again. And there weren't any defining songs to these new characters, which made all the characters really forgettable. They tried to bring in new friends, they brought back the old friends, but all those new friends, much like the songs, you don't really see anything from them and you forget them by the end of the movie. The improvements I do think they made was the animation style, and where this movie looked the best was in the nighttime animation scenes. I think on the water at night, there was a level of depth in the shading and the overall flow of these characters. I think that is where this movie really shined in those action sequences, especially in that third act. So maybe the story was kind of the same thing over and over again. The music was kind of just slapped together, but the animation really, I thought, was improved from the first one. So I think at least Disney is getting that right. Because even the comedy wasn't anything new. It was really just rehashing some of the jokes from the first one, which again, I don't think kids are really going to care about that. In the theater, people were still laughing as this movie went along. But I think the main thing was we didn't really see a whole lot of development from the character of Moana from 1 to 2 because she went through that entire journey in one. And at the start of this movie, it almost felt like she was back at that point. After going through all those things and finding out all these things about herself and being this really strong character by the end of one, it almost like she regressed a little bit and was learning all over again. Instead, I would have liked to have seen her shine more at the beginning of this movie. Yes, still been given a test that she had to overcome and do what she set out to do was find this island and connect her people with the rest of the world. That still could have been a test, but I would have liked to see her be kind of a stronger leader in the beginning because I think that would have been more impactful to kids of seeing like, oh, she learned something from the first one. She has these leadership skills now that she has to hone in and the struggles of being a leader where even though you are strong and have proven yourself, how do you kind of advance on that? Instead, it was kind of just her from the beginning again, all over, and then trying to do what she did in the first one. So I think you have to give the kids like a stronger role model at the beginning and show what comes with, even though you have proven yourself, how you have to do it again. The other interesting thing about Disney movies now is I think they want to bring this incentive for people to see it in theaters to maximize profits. It's putting butts in the seats. But I almost feel like we're at a point now with technology. And I got this idea because as the movie was wrapping up, there was a kid sitting next to us with her dad and said, hey, can we watch this at home now? And I think that is the mentality that kids have now because you can so easily watch everything on your phone, your tablet, on Disney Plus. and you don't really have that separation of, wait, I can watch this in theaters, but I can't watch it at home now. I almost feel like Disney, which I feel like this is probably an expensive thing for them to do, or maybe they wouldn't make a whole lot of money off of this, but I feel like there was always this kind of idea that people had of back when you would go to concerts and you'd go see a band, and then after you see that band, if you enjoyed them, you could buy the CD at the end of the concert and then listen to it because they're out promoting an album. You enjoyed the band. Now I want to listen to the album at home. I feel like there was a point where people wanted to do that with movies of, hey, you go see a movie in theaters. If you enjoyed it, you could buy it in the lobby, and that way you could watch it at home. I feel like there should be that kind of incentive for people to go see a movie in theaters. And maybe it's as easy as, hey, if you go watch Moana 2 in theaters, we'll give you this code where you can go plug it into Disney Plus and then watch it at home for maybe a week. You get early access to it because it's going to be on Disney Plus eventually, probably in 3 or 4 months, depending on how well this does in its box office run. But it could be as easy as like a QR code. You upload your ticket that you paid for either on your app or if you actually buy it at the theater, and you're given a code that only works on your Disney Plus at home, like a one time code. You're not sharing it with everybody. And that way, it gives people an incentive to go see it in theaters because then you can take it home and watch it again. And I think that's important for kids who want to rewatch it immediately. Maybe some parents don't want that because for a movie like this, they get tired of it by the end of it just being on repeat on Disney Plus over and over again. But I think when you're trying to give people a reason to go to the theater, you have to give them some kind of incentive that isn't just spending more money. So, yeah, you can go to the theater to get the exclusive popcorn bucket, but I want something I can get for free and take home. Give me a reason to do that. So, that's just an idea I had because I too sometimes would like to rewatch a movie instantly when I get home to catch some things I missed. And then sometimes by the time it is on a streaming service, I don't care to rewatch it again. So maybe Disney can make something like that happen, but probably won't because it probably doesn't make them a whole lot of money. It's only going to make us happy, and they don't want that. I will say, as much crap as I give The Rock, he is actually a really good voice actor. I think he should stop doing live action movies and just do voice acting because he really shines as Maui. I think he really gives it his all. You can see his inflections and how much he puts a lot of his personal details into Maui. I think he has a lot of fun with it. It's probably also easier to fit into his schedule. He can just get into a recording booth, lay some lines down, and then get on his private jet and go work out for 10 hours or whatever he does, whatever causes him to be 5, 12 hours late to set. I think he actually does really great work in voice acting. Maui is his best character in the last 10 years. Why is Maui his best character in the last 10 years? It's because it's the only character that he portrays that actually has depth, that actually goes through something, that actually has ups and downs and doesn't win all the time. Maui loses fights. Maui also wins fights. Maui goes through sad times. All his other characters in every other movie, he's just the same thing over and over again, wins every fight, doesn't get a scratch on him, faces no adversity. Maui actually has that, so I think that is why he's so attached to this character and why he's going to do him again in the live action movie. But I'm not that excited for that. I think he should just stick to doing more animated roles. So for Moana 2, I don't think it was entirely necessary. Ooh, I was even at a 2.5 for a while, but there was some clapping at the end of this movie, and I think people did leave satisfied. And I saw a lot of happy faces all around, so I think I have to give it a 0.5 just because I am an adult talking about an animated movie meant for a much younger demographic. And if they had a good time, I think that is worth a 0.5 boost. So for Moana 2, I give it 3 out of 5 hooks.